Hello and welcome to day 49 of revising UPSC previous year questions for UPSC 2027. In this video, I will cover GS2 of the year 2018, and I already covered all the question papers of the year 2019 to 2025 except the case studies of GS4, which I will cover after I am done with all these previous year questions up to the year 2013. So let's get started with question number 1. Question 1. In the light of recent controversy regarding the use of electronic voting machines EVM, what are the challenges before the Election Commission of India to ensure the trustworthiness of elections in India? Mandated under Article 324 to conduct free and fair elections, the Election Commission of India faces challenges regarding public trust amid recurring political and technical controversies surrounding EVMs and VVPATs. Key challenges facing the ECI: perception deficit and misinformation. Persistent allegations by political parties questioning standalone machine integrity erode public confidence in electoral outcomes. VVPAT auditing dilemma: demands for 100% matching of voter verifiable paper audit trail. Demands for 100% matching of voter verifiable paper audit trail slips conflict with logistical speed, though the Supreme Court Association for Democratic Reforms 2024 upheld sample verification and administrative safeguards. Hardware and chain of custody security: ensuring strict non-tampering during transport, first level checks, and mock polls in the presence of party polling agents, transparency in technical architecture, addressing concerns regarding source code compilation, microcontroller programming, and independent expert audits. Upholding electoral trust requires continuous technical transparency, transparent administrative protocols, and voter awareness to maintain democratic legitimacy. Question 2. Whether National Commission for Scheduled Castes NCSC can enforce the implementation of constitutional reservation for the scheduled caste in the religious minority institution. Examine. The National Commission for Scheduled Caste NCSC, a constitutional body under Article 338, oversees safeguards for scheduled caste. However, its jurisdiction regarding affirmative action is constrained by constitutional protections granted to minority institutions. So, constitutional boundary and CSC powers, Article 338, minority rights, Article 30, and this is written here. The fundamental right to administer institution expressly exempted from SC quotas, Article 15.5. Exemption under Article 15.5. The 93rd Constitutional Amendment Act explicitly exempt religious and linguistic minority educational institutions from mandating reservations for SCs, STs, and OBCs. Fundamental right under Article 30, Clause 1. Minorities have the fundamental right to establish and administer educational institutions. Imposing statutory reservation alters their minority character. PA Inamdar case 2005. NCSC's statutory limitations. While the NCSC enjoys civil code powers for summoning documents under Article 3388, its recommendations are advisory, not binding executive decrees. All Indian Overseas Banks SC/ST Employees Welfare Association 1996. This is the case name. The NCSC cannot create or enforce reservations where substantive constitutional provisions expressly exclude them. And you have to see that a reservation is primarily the case of like distributive justice, and in that only Parliament can make laws, not even the court. The NCSC cannot legally enforce SC reservations in religious minority institutions. Resolving this tension requires balancing affirmative social justice with constitutional minority rights. Question 3. Under what circumstances can the financial emergency be proclaimed by the President of India. What consequences follow when such a declaration remain in force? Article 360 of the Indian Constitution empowers Article 360 of the Indian Constitution empowers the President to proclaim a financial emergency when the financial stability or credit of India or any part of its territory is threatened. So the financial emergency architecture, ground of proclamation, Article 361, and major constitutional consequences. You can go through this. Circumstances of proclamation. Threat to financial solvency proclaimed by the President acting on cabinet advice if satisfied that a situation has arisen threatening the financial stability or credit of India. Parliamentary approval must be approved by both houses of parliament within 2 months by a simple majority, remaining in force indefinitely until revoked. Consequences during operation. Executive centralization. The Union Executive can issue binding directions to states regarding financial propriety and expenditure controls. Salary reduction. The President can direct salary and allowance cuts for all persons serving the Union and states, including the judges of the Supreme Court and the High Courts. Article 364b. Reservation of money bills. States can be required to reserve all money bills and financial bills passed by state legislatures for presidential consideration. Though never revoked to date, Article 360 serves as a powerful constitutional mechanism to restore sovereign credit and ensure macroeconomic stability during crisis. Question 4. Why do you think the committees are considered to be useful for parliamentary work? Discuss in this context the role of Estimates Committee. Parliamentary committees acts as parliamentary committees act as institutional mini legislatures, providing the technical scrutiny, non-partisan deliberation, and continuous oversight that the plenary house cannot achieve due to limited time and procedural rigidities. The parliamentary committee unity, this is an important committee, okay? In-depth, in-depth technical scrutiny, non-partisan consensus, and continuous accountability. And this is written here: year-round legislative oversight over line ministries. Utility for parliamentary work. Detailed scrutiny conducts in-depth examinations of complex technical policies, bills, and budgetary demands. Non-partisan deliberation. Closed-door meetings allow MPs across party lines to deliberate on national issues away from camera polarization. Continuous executive accountability keeps ministries systematically accountable throughout the year, even when Parliament is not in session. Roles of the Estimate Committee. Composition consists exclusively of 30 Lok Sabha members elected annually via proportional representation. Ministers cannot be member. Continuous Economic Committee examines budget estimates to suggest administrative efficiencies, alternative policies, and organizational economies. Ensures that public expenditures conform to sound financial management. Ex ante financial examination. Committees bridge the gap between policy intent and fiscal discipline, with the Estimates Committee acting as an essential watchdog for administrative economy. Question 5. The Comptroller and Auditor General CAG has a very vital role to play. Explain how this is reflected in the method and terms of his appointment as well as the range of powers he can exercise. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar described the Comptroller and Auditor General of India, CAG, Article 148, as the most important officer under the Constitution, serving as the primary institutional guardian of the public purse and democratic financial accountability. CAG independence and mandate matrix. So, institutional independence, Article 148, auditing authority, Article 149 to 151. Independence in appointment and service terms. Presidential appointment, appointed by the President by warrant under hand and seal, Article 1481. Security of tenure removed only on grounds of proven misbehavior or incapacity through an address by both houses of parliament on par with a Supreme Court judge. post-retirement bar, ineligible for further office under the Government of India or any state, preventing conflicts of interests. Charged expenditure, administrative expenses and salaries are charged upon the Consolidated Fund of India, non-votable. Broad range of exercisable powers, Article 149. Comprehensive audit scope, audits all receipts and expenditures from the consolidated and contingency funds of the Union and states. Compliance and propriety audit evaluates not just legal expenditure compliance but examine efficiency, economy, and financial propriety to detect waste and corruption. Public Accounts Interface submits annual audit reports, Article 151, to the President, Governor, which forms the basis for Public Accounts Committee PSC hearings. Constitutional safeguards ensure the CAG remains an independent, fearless auditor, safeguarding democratic accountability and public financial integrity. Question 6. Policy contradictions among various competing sectors and stakeholders have resulted in inadequate protection and prevention of degradation to environment. Comment with relevant illustrations. Environmental Protection Act. Environmental protection under Article 48A and 51A G frequently conflicts with sector-specific growth targets, fragmented ministerial mandates, and competing stakeholders' interests often dilute ecological safeguards. SDG 13 and 15. A policy contradiction nexus, energy versus ecology, agriculture versus water, forest versus infrastructure. A linear infra clearance, fragmented wildlife corridors. Sectoral policy contradiction, energy versus climate commitments, energy versus climate commitment, expanding domestic coal mining targets to ensure energy security contradicts international commitments to reduce emission and preserve biodiversity. Agriculture versus resource conservation, highly subsidized electricity and free power for agriculture encourage severe groundwater depletion and overuse of chemical fertilizers. Example, green revolution bells. Infrastructure versus forest rights, fast tracking environmental clearance for highways and linear infrastructure projects undermine the Forest Rights Act, FRA 2006, and fragments fragile elephant and tiger corridor. Example, Western Ghats. Industrial growth versus river health. Industrial ease of doing business initiatives often clash with pollution control board enforcement, leading to untreated toxic effluents in river basin. Overcoming these contradictions requires institutionalizing strategic environmental assessments SEA and adopting an integrated whole of government approach to balance growth with sustainability. Question 7. Appropriate local community level healthcare intervention is a prerequisite to achieve health for all in India. Explain. Achieving health for all and universal health coverage SDG 3 under the National Health Policy 2017 depends heavily on robust primary healthcare, as over 70% of healthcare needs can be resolved at the grassroots community level. The grassroots healthcare delivery, preventive and promotive, financial de-risking, last mile inclusivity. Why community level interventions are a prerequisite? Preventing and promotive care, community health workers, ASHA and NMA, ANMs lead immunization, sanitation, education, and maternal child nutrition, preventing chronic disease escalation. Early screening of non-communicable diseases. Local wellness centers enable timely detection of hypertension, diabetes, and cancers, preventing expensive tertiary complications. Reduction in out-of-pocket expenditure, providing free essential medicines and diagnostic locally protects vulnerable rural households from medical debt traps. Culturally sensitive and accessible delivery. Community health workers bridge social barriers, overcome local stigma, and ensuring maternal care. Article 47. Decentralized epidemic surveillance. Grassroots monitoring acts as an early warning system for infectious disease outbreaks. Empowering primary health infrastructure through Ayushman Arogya Mandirs and local community workers is essential foundation for equitable universal healthcare. Question 8. E-governance is not only about utilization of the power of new technology, but also much more about critical importance of the use value of information. Explain. As noted by the second ARC 11th report, e-governance extends beyond digitizing paper processes is transformative. As noted by the second ARC 11th report, e-governance extends beyond digitizing paper processes. Its transformative potential lies in maximizing the use value of data to enhance administrative transparency, responsiveness, and citizen empowerment. So, information use value spectrum, targeted enlightenments, proactive grievance redress, informed citizenry. The use value of information in governance. Targeted welfare delivery, utilizing demographic and socio-economic data across the JAM Trinity eliminates ghost beneficiaries, ensuring direct benefit transfers (DBT) reach the intended poor. Evidence-based policy formulation, aggregated public health and education data. Example: UDICE Ocean Tracker allows policymakers to identify local deprivations and allocate resource efficiently. Proactive public grievance redress, analyzing patterns in grievance portals, example CP grams, enables root cause structural reforms rather than temporary fixes. Citizen empowerment and accountability, open government data and online portals transform static administrative records into actionable information for public scrutiny and social audits. SDG 16. Predictive governance, analyzing real-time weather and market price data, empowers farmers through timely agro advisories. The true measure of e-governance is not the complexity of its technology, but its ability to convert information into accessible public value and accountable governance. Question 9. India's relation with Israel have of late acquired a depth and diversity which cannot be rolled back. Discuss. India's foreign policy toward Israel has evolved from cautious diplomacy into a strategic partnership enabled by the de-hyphenation of ties with Palestine and deep convergence in defense, agriculture, and high technology. De-hyphenation. India-Israel strategic matrix, defense and counter-terror, agrotech and water security, minilateral synergy. Depth and diversity of bilateral ties. De-hyphenated strategic engagement. India engages Israel on bilateral merits while maintaining an independent principled stance supporting Palestinian statehood. Defense and intelligence cooperation. Israel is a critical defense supplier providing cutting-edge platform, Barak 8 air defense, Falcon AWACS, Heron drones, along with joint manufacturing and technology transfers make in India. Agricultural and water resilience. Over 30 centers of excellence across India utilize Israel micro-irrigation, wastewater recycling and protected cultivation technologies. High-tech innovation and cybersecurity. Strong joint R&D in quantum computing, artificial intelligence, semiconductor design and institutional cyber defense collaboration. Minilateral strategic formats, regional cooperation with the I2U2 group, India, Israel, UAE, USA integrates India into West Asian economic, maritime, and technological corridors, grounded in shared security priorities and technological synergy. The India-Israel partnership has matured into a multi-sectoral relationship resilient to geopolitical shifts. Question 10. A number of outside powers have entrenched themselves in Central Asia, which is a zone of interest in India. Discuss the implications in this context of India's joining to Ashgabat Agreement 2018. Central Asia is a region of immense strategic interest for India's energy security and continental connectivity. However, the region is also an arena of great power rivalry marked by China's BRI and Russia's traditional security presence. Implication of joining the Ashgabat Agreement. Bypassing continental transit blocks. bypassing continental transit block. Provides India with an international transit and transport corridor linking Central Asia with the Persian Gulf, bypassing Pakistan's denial of overland transit. Synergy with Chabar Port and INSTC integrates India's operational terminal at Chabar Port, Iran directly with the International North-South Transport Corridor INSTC, reducing freight transit time to Eurasia, unlocking synergy and mineral access, enhancing direct trade access to Central Asia's vast uranium natural gas, Turkmenistan and critical mineral deposits, balancing great power footprints offers Central Asian republics CARs an alternative transparent trade corridor balancing China's dominant economic presence in the region, bolstering the Connect Central Asia policy, strengthen regional counterterrorism cooperation and trade ties across Eurasia. Accession to the Ashgabat Agreement anchors India's continental connectivity, securing its economic energy and geopolitical interests across Central Asia. Question 11, whether the Supreme Court judgment July 2018 can settle the political tussle between the Lieutenant Governor and elected government of Delhi. Examine. The Constitutional Bench ruling the government of NCT of Delhi versus Union of India 2018 sought to resolve the power struggle over Delhi's unique constitutional status under Article 239 AA, emphasizing representative democracy, constitutional morality, and collaborative federalism. July 2018 SC constitutional balance, elected government supremacy, and LG's constitutional boundaries. This is an important topic because every year this was now it is not after because the governments are same in the Delhi and in the Delhi region and in the center, but before that it was like everyday's topic. So there the possibilities are less between the conflict of the LG and the chief minister of Delhi in the upcoming years that the question will be asked on this topic, but still you should know. So key principle established by the 2018 verdict: primacy of the elected executive. The Council of Ministers, led by the chief ministers, hold primary executive authority. The lieutenant governor and is bound by the aid and advice of ministers on all subjects except public order, police, and land. LG not an autonomous decision maker. The court clarified that the LG cannot act independently or withhold assent mechanically. Executive decisions require communication to the LG, not his mandatory prior concurrence. Narrowing the referral power, the LG's power to refer differences of opinion to the President under the proviso to Article 239 AA4 must be exercised in exceptional matters involving national interest, not a standard governance file. Persistent limitation in settling the political tussle. Ambiguity over services. The 2018 judgment did not conclusively settle control over administrative services. Entry 41, which necessitated subsequent constitution bench ruling in 2023. Parliamentary legislative overrides. The subsequent enactment of the GNCTD Amendment Act shifted control over civil services back to central bodies, example NCCSA, illustrating that structural friction between union primacy and regional autonomy transcends judicial interpretation alone. While the 2018 judgment laid clear constitutional guardrails, durable governance in the national capital requires institutional trust, political consensus, and respect for collaborative federalism. Question 12. How far do you agree with the view that tribunals curtail the jurisdiction of ordinary courts? In view of the above, discuss the constitutional validity and competency of the tribunals in India. Inserted by the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act 1976, Part 14A, Articles 323A and 323B institutionalized tribunals to offer specialized speedy adjudication and relieve Pendency in ordinary courts. Tribunalization versus ordinary courts. Jurisdictional curtailment concern, constitutional validity safeguards. So you can go through this. I will make a separate lectures in which I will come up with all the articles relevant from 2013 to 2026, which you should go through your Lakshmikant or whatever source you are using, so that because these articles constantly asked in the exam, so you should be aware. Okay. Do tribunals curtail the jurisdiction of ordinary courts, substantive rather than supplementary? Tribunals handle specialized subject matters, company law, via NCLT, environment via NGT, administrative dispute via CAT, stripping initial jurisdiction from district and subordinate civil courts, initial exclusion of judicial review. Early statutory models sought to bypass High Court writ supervision by providing direct appeals exclusively to the Supreme Court. Constitutional validity and competency. Affirmation of constitutional validity. L. Chandra Kumar case 1997. The Supreme Court upheld the creation of tribunal under Article 323A and 323B, but ruled that the power of judicial review under Article 226, 227 High Courts and Article 32 Supreme Court is the part of the basic structure and cannot be excluded. Decisions of tribunals must remain subject to the supervisory scrutiny of a division bench of the respective High Court. Judicial competency and institutional independence. In Madras Bar Association 2020-2021, the Supreme Court struck down executive rules that compromised tribunal autonomy, mandating parity of tenure, fair allowances, and search-cum-selection committees headed by the Chief Justice of India. The tribunals do not extinguish the tribunals do not extinguish the jurisdiction of the higher judiciary when equipped with adequate judicial independence and technical expertise. They act as a specialized supplementary instruments for accessible justice. India and USA are two large democracies. Examine the basic tenets on which the two political systems are based. Again, USA versus India comparison. So USA is their favorite when it comes to comparison. They asked like in 2024, 25, 26 consecutively in 3 years, and they asked many times from it. They asked in 2018, 19 also, like consecutively. India, the world's largest democracy, and United States, the world's oldest continuous constitutional democracy, share deep commitments to constitutionalism, fundamental liberties, and the rule of law, though they diverge significantly in their structural as institutional design. Comparative constitutional matrices. So Indian democratic framework, US democratic framework. Comparative analysis of basic political tenets. Constitutional dimension, Indian system and US system. Separation of powers. Fusion of powers, the executive is drawn from and directly accountable to the legislature, Article 74 and 75. Strict separation, clear institutional demarcations among the President, Congress, and Supreme Court with checks and balances. Federal character, quasi-federal union of states, Article 1, with a strong unitary bias during national emergency, Article 352. Pure federalism. Dual federalism originating from a compact between sovereign states, equal representation in the Senate. Judicial architecture, integrated judiciary, single hierarchical system administering both central and state statutes. Dual judiciary, separate federal and state court systems operating in distinct legal jurisdiction. Constitutional amendment, flexible yet rigid, mix of simple, special, and ratified majorities. Article 368, bound by the basic structure doctrine, extremely rigid, requires a 2/3 majority in Congress and ratification by 3/4 of the states. Citizenship, single national citizenship promoting nationwide unity, Article 9. Dual citizenship, citizen of both the United States and the specific individual state. While US emphasizes strict institutional checks and state sovereignty, India balances parliamentary responsibility with national integration, both demonstrating the adaptability of constitutional democracy. How is the Finance Commission of India constituted? What do you think? What do you know about the terms of reference of the recently constituted Finance Commission? Discuss. The Finance Commission of India is a quasi-judicial constitutional body constituted every 5 years by the President under Article 280, serving as the institutional anchor for vertical and horizontal fiscal federalism. So, Finance Commission architecture, constitutional composition, Article 280, and core mandates and terms of reference TOR. So, method of constitutional provision, the president appoints the chairman and four other members under Article 281. 281. Statutory qualifications, Finance Commission Act 1951. Chairman, a person experienced in public affairs. Members drawn from fields including High Court judges, public finance and accounts experts, experienced administrator and professional economist. Core term of reference and key issues. Vertical devolution, determining the distribution of the net proceeds of divisible taxes between the union and the states. Horizontal allocation principles, formulating criteria for allocating tax shares among individual states based on equity and efficiency. Example, income distance, demographic performance, forest cover, and fiscal efforts. Grant in aid under Article 275, defining principles governing revenue deficit grants, disaster relief allocation, and local body grants. Augmenting consolidated funds of states. Recommending measures to supplement the resources of panchayats and municipalities based on State Finance Commission inputs. Article 283C, fiscal consolidation and debt paths. Recommending medium-term fiscal deficit targets to ensure subnational macroeconomic stability without curtailing developmental capital outlays. The Finance Commission balances subnational equity with fiscal efficiency, ensuring cooperative federalism and resilient public financial management. Question 15 assesses the importance of the panchayat system in India as a part of local government. Apart from government grants, what sources the panchayats can look out for financing developmental projects? The 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act 1992 institutionalized the Panchayati Raj system under Part 9, Articles 243 to 243O, establishing decentralized grassroots democracy and bottom-up local governance across rural India. Panchayati fiscal and governance metrics of democratic and developmental importance, alternative financing avenues beyond grants. Importance of the panchayat system, deepening participatory democracy, institutionalizes direct citizen deliberation through Gram Sabhas. Article 243A, enabling bottom-up decision making. Inclusive political empowerment, reserves 1/3 of seats for women. Article 243D, and proportional representation for SC/ST communities, bringing marginalized groups into active local leadership. Targeted delivery of 29 functional subjects, manages local services under the 11th schedule, including drinking water, rural sanitation, primary roads, and watershed management. Sources for financing beyond government grants. Own source revenues, OSR, levying local property taxes, land taxes, registration fees on rural assets and trade licenses, levying user charges on community drinking water, sanitation facilities, street lighting and village drainage, imposing entry fees and operational duties on local weekly rural markets, haats, cattle fairs and pilgrimage transit points. Corporate social responsibility, CSR funds, partnering with private corporations to finance schools, rural healthcare clinics, and community digital centers. Public-private partnership (PPPs), collaborating with private operators on rural renewable energy projects. Example, decentralized solar plants under PM Kusum and solid waste recycling. Community contributions, Shramdan and philanthropy. Mobilizing voluntary community labor and donations from successful rural and non-resident diaspora networks, strengthening own source revenue mobilization and building administrative capacity enables panchayats to transition from grant dependent implementing agents to self-reliant institutions of local self-government. Article 40. Question 16. Multiplicity of various commissions for the vulnerable sections of the society leads to problems of overlapping jurisdiction and duplication of functions. Is it better to merge all commissions into an umbrella human rights commission? Argue your case. India's institutional framework includes multiple statutory and constitutional bodies for marginalized groups NS, NCSC, NCST, NCBC, NCW, NCPCR, minority commissions. While intended to provide targeted focus, this multiplicity often causes institutional friction and jurisdictional overlap. Commission structure dilemma. So, case for umbrella merger, case for retaining plurality, and this is written here constitutional mandates, Article 338, 338A, 338B. So, arguments for merging into an umbrella commission, elimination of jurisdictional overlap, incidents involving intersectional identities, example, a Dalit woman or a tribal child, trigger parallel notices from NCW, NCSC, and NCPCR, creating bureaucratic confusion. Fiscal and administrative optimization, merging redundant secretariats into a unified National Human Rights Commission (NHRC) model reduces administrative cost and infrastructure overheads. Unified enforcement strength, a consolidated umbrella commission prevents interagency disputes and creates a single window grievance redressal platform for citizens. Counter arguments, the risk of dilution, loss of specialized focus, distinct vulnerabilities such as the historical caste discrimination of Dalits, distinct land rights of Adivasis, or gender dynamics requires dedicated constitutional scrutiny rather than broad general human rights treatment. Constitutional architecture, bodies like the NCSC Article 338, NCST Article 338A, and NCBC Article 33B enjoy constitutional status with quasi-judicial powers that cannot be merged into a statutory umbrella body without extensive constitutional restructuring. Institutional overload. A single umbrella commission would risk becoming overwhelmed by India's vast volume of human rights grievances. The balanced way forward. Instead of complete merger, establish an inter-commission coordination council as suggested by the second ARC to share investigation databases, harmonize summonses and resolve jurisdictional overlap while preserving specialized mandates, preserving independent constitutional bodies while building digital interoperability, balances administrative efficiency with dedicated protection for vulnerable communities. As example, SDG 10 and 16. Question 17. How far do you agree with the view that the focus on lack of availability of food as the main cause of hunger takes the attention away from ineffective human development policies in India? The narrative attributing hunger solely to food production deficits, food availability decline model is incomplete. As demonstrated by Amartya Sen's entitlement theory, hunger in India persists primarily due to failures in accessibility, absorption, and broader human development policies, SDG 2 and 3. So, multidimensional hunger matrix, production paradigm, gain availability, and human development failure, absorption. You can go through these. Why food availability is no longer the primary bottleneck. Record agricultural surplus. India is self-sufficient in food grains, holding substantial buffer stocks in Central FC silos, FCI silos. Silos. Legal caloric entitlement. The National Food Security Act, NFSA 2013 provides subsidized and free food grains to over 80 crore citizens, addressing baseline grain availability. Human development failure driving chronic hunger and malnutrition. Deficit area, manifestation and structural impact. Nutritional absorption and wash, poor access to clean water, poor access to clean drinking water and sanitation. Jal Jeevan Mission Swachh Bharat causes frequent and frequent enteric infections, preventing nutrient absorption, NFHS data. Hidden hunger and dietary diversity. Cereal-centric diets lack essential micronutrients, zinc, iron, protein, leading to high rates of stunting, approximately 35%, and wasting, approx 19% among children. Maternal health and female literacy. Early childbearing, maternal anemia, more than 50% prevalence, and low female educational attainment directly translate to low birth weight infants. Purchasing power and rural wages, subdued real rural wages, and high out-of-pocket health costs erode household economic entitlements to balanced diets. Ending hunger requires shifting focus from cereal-centric availability to a multi-sectoral human development approach, integrating clean sanitation, female literacy, and dietary diversification. Poshan Abhiyan. Question 18. The Citizens Charter is an ideal instrument of organizational transparency and accountability, but it has its own limitations. Identify their limitations and suggest measures for greater effectiveness of the Citizens Charter. Introduced to transform public administration into a responsive service culture, the Citizens Charter outlines an organization's commitment towards service standards, timelines, and grievance redressal mechanism. However, implementation gaps often reduce it to a symbolic document. Citizens Charter, although that was an effective exercise, but it failed miserably. Structural implementation limitation and reformative measures for impact. You can go through this. The major limitation in practice. Top-down and non-consultative formulation, drafted by senior bureaucrats without consulting frontline staffs or grassroots citizens, resulting in unrealistic service standards. Non-justiciable nature. Charters lack statutory backing and enforceable penalties for non-compliance, leaving citizens with limited legal recourse against administrative delays. Vague standards and poor awareness. Commitments are often broadly worded. Example, prompt disposal. While public awareness regarding charter provisions remain low, second ARC findings, static and unreviewed designs. Organizations rarely update commitments to reflect evolving citizen needs or charging technological capabilities. Measures for greater effectiveness. Statutory enforceability. Enact legislation modeled on state level right to public services acts, making compensation for procedural delays mandatory. Adoption of the Sevottam model. Institutionalize the three-part framework. Charter implementation, public grievance redressal, and service delivery capabilities. Decentralized co-creation involves civil society organization, local trade bodies, and frontline staff in drafting and reviewing performance standards. Digital transparency and real-time tracking, integrated charters with e-governance, tracking dashboards, CP grounds for transparent monitoring, periodic independent audits, conduct annual third-party audits and stakeholder social audits to update service standards, transforming Citizens Charter into enforceable participatory instruments, moves administration from procedural inertia towards citizen-centric governance. SDG 16. Question 19. What are the key areas of reform if the WTO has to survive in the present context of trade war, especially keeping in mind the interest of India? The WTO faces systemic challenges driven by rising protectionism, unilateral tariffs, and paralyzes and paralysis of its dispute mechanism. Reforming the organization is essential to revive multilateralism while safeguarding the development policy space for emerging economies like India. WTO reform pillars and Indian interests, reviving dispute settlement, agricultural equity, AOA, and developmental safeguards. Key areas of WTO reforms: restoring the dispute settlement mechanism DSM. The primary imperative is unblocking appointments to the appellate body stalled by the US vetoes, restoring a binding two-tier dispute resolution system to check trade war unilateralism, reforming plurilateral and multilateral negotiations, preventing narrow plurilateral. These are like tongue twister, man. Plurilateral, joint statement initiatives, JSI from bypassing the traditional consensus based multilateral framework. Specific reforms in India's core interest. Permanent solution for public stockholding PSH. Reforming outdated agreement on agriculture AOA reference prices fixed at 1986 and 88 baselines to secure permanent legal protections for India's food procurement and MSP programs, NFSA requirements, protecting special and differential treatments, resisting proposals by developed economies to strip developing nations of S&DT flexibilities which are vital for protecting domestic smallholders, farmers, and MSMEs. Fisheries subsidies discipline, ensuring exemptions for small-scale, non-commercial artisanal fishers from global subsidy restrictions, cross-border digital trade and e-commerce, resisting permanent moratoria on customs duties on electronic transmissions to protect domestic digital tax revenues and support domestic tech ecosystems. A balanced WTO reform agenda must reconcile rule-based international trade with the food security developmental sovereignty and livelihood needs of the global south. Question 20. In what ways would the ongoing US-Iran nuclear pact controversy affect the national interest of India? How should India respond to this situation? This was a hot topic in that time. Instability surrounding the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action JCPOA and unilateral sanction on Iran directly affects India's energy security, regional connectivity ambitions, and strategic positioning in West Asia. Impact vectors on India's interest: energy diversification, continental connectivity, and geopolitical balancing, maintaining autonomy across US, Iran, and Gulf partners. Impact on India's national interest: energy security and inflation. Sanctions on Iranian crude forced India to halt discounted oil purchases, increasing exposure to global price shocks and freight costs. Strategic Eurasian connectivity. US sanction threats complicate private investments, equipment procurement, and banking operations at Chabahar port, and the INSTC slow trade connectivity to Afghanistan and Central Asia. Regional security and diaspora safety. Escalating Persian Gulf tensions threaten maritime commercial shipping corridors through the Strait of Hormuz, directly affecting the security of over 8 million Indian diaspora workers across the region. Geopolitical realignment. Economic isolation pushes Iran closer to China's economic and security orbit. Example: 25-year China-Iran strategic accord, narrowing India's regional leverage. Recommended strategic response: strategic dimensions, diplomatic and economic actions. Strategic autonomy: pursue active diplomatic hyphenation, maintaining functional ties with Tehran while preserving the India-US comprehensive global strategic partnership. Sanction carve out. Secure explicit US sanctions waiver for Chabahar port operations by highlighting its humanitarian role for landlocked Afghanistan. Alternative financial channels. Establish rupee real payment mechanisms and local currency trading routes to maintain essential bilateral commerce. Multilateral engagement, advocate for diplomatic dialogue and JCPOA revival through international forums supporting regional maritime security frameworks. Navigating this geopolitical tension requires India to leverage its strategy. Navigating this geopolitical tension requires India to leverage its strategic autonomy, safeguarding its continental transit and energy interests while promoting stability across West Asia.